Hello everybody, Razorblade Mango here, and this is Resident Evil 7. And if I have one criticism of the game, it's that they don't do that at the beginning. I was waiting for that, and they don't do it. And it's like, look, I know you want to go through a different kind of tone with this, but come on, you gotta have the Resident Evil up there at the beginning, but they don't. That sucks, but whatever. So anyway, this is Resident Evil 7. This is the first, full-length game I have played this year. And I'm not counting Kingdom Hearts, because Kingdom Hearts is a collection. So this, for me, this is, officially the first 2017 game that I'm covering on this channel. And fuck, what a great way to start this year. I can't think of a better way to start this year than the triumphant return of an iconic franchise like Resident Evil. Resident Evil hasn't been good in a long time, at least for the main series, in my opinion. I think there are elements of 5 that I find okay. I think Wesker is obviously the best part of that game, just because Wesker is so fun to watch. 6 is crap. I've made that very clear in the past. I don't like 6. I think it is incredibly boring. And now we have Resident Evil 7, which, when it was revealed, I think surprised a lot of people, because it looked like Outlast. It looked like PT. It looked like Amnesia: The Dark Descent. And when you think about those games, you think about, evasion and hiding. You don't really think of combat or puzzles or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe with PT you do, but you don't really think of Resident Evil as this, first-person horror game. And the brilliant thing that Capcom have managed to do is not only have they taken a ton of influence from all these different, not only just games like, PT, Outlast, Amnesia, Dead Space, but a lot of horror movies as well. It takes influence from, obviously, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, takes influence from Evil Dead, from Saw, from the Blair Witch Project, a number of different horror subgenres. And when you write all these influences down on paper, just on this big list, it seems like a mess. It seems like this big confused blob of really conflicting tones and structure and all that. It just sounds like a mess. But Capcom these people that made this game, they managed to find a way to blend all of these influences and all of these subgenres into it that really make for not only an outstanding horror experience, but an outstanding Resident Evil game. It's surprising just how traditional this game is. When you look at it in a first glance, you don't really see it as Resident Evil, but once you, and really the opening hour of it, opening 30 minutes to an hour, really don't feel like a Resident Evil game. It's great in its own right, but doesn't feel like Resident Evil. But once you get into the beautifully designed Baker Estate, which might as well be the Spencer Mansion. They got the same architect that made the Spencer Mansion, and they made the Baker Estate. But once you see what that becomes and how the world opens up after that, it is Resident Evil through and through. It's got the themed doors. It's got the secret passageways. It's got the puzzles. It's got the keys. It's got the herbs. It's got all the weird, wacky humor that the series has done before. Even at its absolute bleakest in Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil the original, it still has this really goofy, campy, underlining tone to it. And that's what Resident Evil 7 brings back, to my delight. That's what it brings back. That's what makes this game shine above Resident Evil 5 and 6. Where Resident Evil 5 and 6 just felt like a desperate pretender. Like they were trying to capitalize on, trends of that time, like co-op and QTEs and all that crap. Big, epic, massive boss fights. And it just didn't really fit Resident Evil for the most part. But when you get to 7, it is really streamlined compared to those past games. They really have a narrow focus this time around. And because of that confidence to really just go for it and have this singular vision without, albeit like different influences and tones, it is still a singular vision. And that vision permeates this entire experience, and you really feel the sense that these people know what they're doing. Like they have this like giant respect for Resident Evil. And that enthusiasm and passion, and I always say this, like passion for your product is great. Like it will show. If you genuinely care about the game that you're making, it will show. And that really shows with Resident Evil 7. Because it's a game that was clearly made by people that love horror, that love all different kinds of horror, and of course that can make a great game, and that can design a really great environment and create this beautiful new RE engine specifically for the game, which by the way runs at a buttery smooth 60 frames even on a console, which is always really awesome to see. So I think the thing I love the most about this game is how damn funny it is. And that's something I don't think a lot of reviewers are really going to stress, but I'm going to, because even though this game is, disgusting and bloody and has some really horrifyingly violent moments, it is a damn funny game. Like there's a scene where like a character, makes this like offhanded comment in front of their dad, and then and you've seen it in the trailer where Daddy Baker like grabs the son's hand and like slices it off, and it's like this shocking moment, but it's also so funny the way the son just reacts, like, oh damn it, not again. There's just something so silly about that, just something so goofy that I can't help but laugh. And I'm not laughing at it, because I seriously believe that these creators wanted this game to have this really darkly comedic undertone to it, and that's great. That's something I think all Resident Evil games should have, like this like underlying tone of silliness. There's a great boss fight between Daddy Baker that I'm not gonna spoil it in this video. I'm not gonna show it. Where basically it's like a movie. It's a scene you'd see out of like a really goofy Friday the 13th movie, or your average like a really goofy Halloween movie. It's fucking ridiculous, and it's fucking stupid. But that's the charm of it. That's what makes it so enjoyable. It's that you're having fun while playing it because of how much you're laughing, because of how just insane it all is. And I love how this game, even like it can get dark, it can get grisly, it can get violent, it never pushes it to that degree where it becomes miserable. And that's not a knock against games that I find, like dark and oppressing, like I'd say like Bloodborne or Outlast, which are two survival horror games that I think are just so overwhelmingly oppressive and miserable and bleak that, they are enjoyable in their own right. But Resident Evil is just something different, where I don't want Resident Evil to be grim and oppressive and sickening. Like, I want it to be, grim and sickening and funny. Like, I want that dark humor to it, and that's what Resident Evil 7 has in spades. and I love it. Just not like in both subtle and non-subtle ways it brings into the equation. What else is great about this game? Oh my god, the graphics and the overall atmosphere of the whole thing. And like I mentioned, they built a new engine just for this game, and it is stunning. Like, when I think of next-gen graphics, this is one of my examples. Like going into this house, and admittedly, some of the textures are a little flat. Some of the plants outside look a little like PS3 era. But when you go inside the house and you look at like all the different like textures of like grease and blood and oil and like maggots and mildew, how gross everything looks, it's beautiful. It's beautiful in a really gross way. There's a scene early on where like you see like a dead body float up to you, and it's like covered in like maggots and it's like rotting flesh, and it looks disgusting, but it also looks great at the same time. And I was just so impressed by how well designed it was. Same thing with the Spencer Mansion, aka the Baker Estate, aka the Spencer Mansion, because it basically is the Spencer Mansion. But it is such a it's such a gorgeously designed environment. Like, when I talk about game environments, like the very best ones I can think of are the ones that provide this sense of intimacy and familiarity with the whole thing, both, big and small worlds, which is why I love, Skyrim, because I'm so intimate with that world. This is why I love something like Kingdom Hearts, because I'm so intimate with like the smaller worlds that are in the series. But Resident Evil, because they've gone back to creating like a small environment, one that focuses on, backtracking and hidden corridors and locked rooms and secrets and keys. Like, because you explore everything so much, you start to become familiar with it all. You start to really know your surroundings, and that is what makes a good game environment into a great one. This sense of intimacy with it. And that's what I get personally from the Baker Estate. I will never forget the moments I've had in this game for as long as I live. Even the times where I feel like it is chomping a little bit too much on some of its influences flavor. Like, I think there's a sequence later on that pays homage a little bit too much to Outlast with because the whole game you've gone through with like guns and upgraded weapons, and then it presents this one moment where all your arsenal is taken away and you basically just have to run from the monsters that are in the game. And I mean, not only are the molded, in my opinion, really not that great of a regular enemy, like I really wasn't all that crazy about them like I was the Ganados from Resident Evil 4. It's like it's just not, after like so many hours of like really classic Resident Evil, for it to then throw in like this Outlast kind of sequence just was not all that crazy about it. Also, I think the ending, if I'm going to start getting into like criticism of the game, I think the ending, the last like hour or so, is rushed and leaves me with a lot of questions regarding the future of this series, both good and bad. Because I think it could have been explored just a little bit more what happens at the end, but I think the implications that the ending brings up are going to be interesting to see, particularly when we get like the free DLC coming out sometime in the spring. So I think like the last hour or so is not as good as the rest of the game, which is unfortunate, because I was like, during this game's like opening hours, I was loving this. Like, I was ready to go like whole hog, like say I fucking adore this game. Like, I was ready to say it, but I think the game's like particularly when you start to leave the Baker estate and the environments you go into afterwards really aren't anywhere near as interesting as the Baker estate is. Like, I wish the whole game had just been focused on the Baker estate. That being said, though, I still really, really, really thoroughly enjoyed this game. I think this might be my favorite horror game I've played since Outlast. And I would go so far as to say, I think Resident Evil 4 is still the best one in the series. I think this is even better than the majority of the others. Like, I think this is better than the original game. I think this is better than Resident Evil 2 or Nemesis. Definitely better than 5 and 6. So yeah, I'd say this is like my second favorite Resident Evil game. It's the one I've been waiting for over a decade now, where this is a game that, unlike its predecessors, or its last two predecessors to be more specific, is not afraid to make you feel vulnerable or scared or intimidated. And it's not afraid to be silly. It's not afraid to have like these moments of like really sickening violence and gore and borderline torture porn at times. It's not afraid to ask you to suspend your disbelief and to just enjoy the ride without really thinking about it all that much of how damn goofy some of this shit is. So yeah, I think Resident Evil 7 is great. I kind of really like this game. Fuck that. I kind of really love this game. And it's a shame that I wish the last hour or so was better or on par with the rest of the game, where I could give it that like insanely big glowing recommendation. But me calling it great, which definitely is not something to scoff at, that will have to make do, because I just had a damn good time with this game. I was playing, the footage you're seeing, I was playing this with one of my best friends when I first got it, and for that first, couple of hours, I was having the time of my life playing it. And this is the same friend that I played Evil Within with. And compared to Evil Within, these two are like wildly different experiences. Where Evil Within was just so boring and uninspired and retrograde in its design, where it felt like it was just clinging to the past in the worst ways. And weirdly enough, that was the game directed by Shinji Mikami, who made Resident Evil 4. And now we have Resident Evil 7 being the game that this series needed all along. It didn't need QTE sequences. It didn't need big, huge boss battles. It didn't need soldier dudes with big fucking guns that will blow up hordes of zombies in a matter of seconds. It didn't need fuck awful cover systems or co-op or any of that shit. It needed some fucking confidence. It needed a singular vision and direction. It needed some fun. And that's what Resident Evil 7 is. Above everything else, above it being gory or scary or lavish, it is fun above everything else. And I thank you. Thank you, Capcom. I rarely ever say that. I rarely ever say thank you to one of these big greedy publishers. But thank you, Capcom, for finally, after all this time, putting this series back on the map with this fantastic game. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where they take this series next. My biggest hope is that they they combine this with Resident Evil 4. They give it a slightly more open map with a little bit more variety in enemies Same goofy story, little bit more, like a little bit more combat to it, but I want something like this, something that has that terror and that intimacy. And trust me, for all of me saying that, this game is funny, this game made me laugh, this game is just so insane and gory and weird, it is still fucking terrifying. Like, I had to, I was being a little bitch playing this game, especially during, the opening couple of hours. Like, I was so tense, I was so on edge, not only because of how well designed everything was, because of how evocative its atmosphere is, how beautiful its graphics are, how amazing its sound design is. I was just so nervous. I felt so vulnerable. I felt so, afraid for my character's life. And having it be in first person, that, I think, is what made the difference. For everyone that scoffed at this game when it was initially announced, for, trying to chomp at PT's flavor and trying to be the next Outlast, this is a game that not only tries new things, but is completely respectful of the 20-year legacy that this thing has. And this game was released in the year of Resident Evil's 20th anniversary, I believe, or it might have been 2016 that it was the anniversary. I can't think of a better way to celebrate this franchise's 20th anniversary than to release the best game in the series since 4, and the game that I think ultimately has saved the franchise. So, yeah, that is Resident Evil 7. It is a great game. If you like horror games like I do, definitely pick this up. Even if you're somebody who doesn't like horror games and is squeamish, I'd say maybe watch a walkthrough of it and just skip through some of the gorier parts, because as I've told people that don't like Resident Evil, that don't like the element of exploration and puzzles and all that, it is still a fun game, and it never becomes too obscure, it never becomes too repetitive, and it's always building up to something. It has great pacing, great scares, great gore, some really good boss fights in it, and it's just overall just a really incredibly satisfying experience. And this is the first game of 2017 that I've played, and this is absolutely going on the cream of the crop list at the end of the year. Resident Evil 7, everybody. Already one of my very favorite games of 2017. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one, guys. Take care.